The night is quiet, but these stories never sleep. Welcome back to the channel, the place where Reddit unveils its darkest and most disturbing secrets. Today we have a story that terrified thousands of readers, and it just might terrify you as well. Just kidding. Alright, let's dive in. Scariest thing that happened to me on Shades of Death Road. Shades of Death Road is a pretty well-known road in New Jersey. It's all over social media, travel guides, books, and more. I've been there 3 times, but after the last time, I don't ever see myself going back. For those who are not familiar, it's a really long road with a lot of curves in some sections, little to no street lamps, and mostly wooded. There are not a lot of driveways or streets to turn down on this road. I can't emphasize that enough. My friends and I, all 21 at the time, went one night. I was in the passenger seat. Friend 1, who we'll call Sammy, was driving, and friend 2, who we'll call Jamie, was sitting in the middle seat in the back. We were driving down the road, playing spooky music on the radio to get ourselves in the mood, and we were purposely driving slowly so we could spend more time there. There's a little lake off the road called Ghost Lake where we saw a car parked. It was a Jeep Wrangler, if I'm remembering correctly. We passed it and continued on the road. We ended up joking around and trying to scare each other. Reached the end of the road and turned back around. When we passed the lake again, we noticed the Jeep had all 4 doors open, headlights on and the right blinker on. It looked like they wanted to leave. I figured we should drive by the car to make sure everything was okay. We drove up next to the car and there was no one inside. Thinking they may have gone swimming, we drove past the lake quickly to see if we saw any waves or ripples, and there was nothing. It was also February in northern New Jersey, so they would have to be out of their minds to be swimming. We turned back onto the road and continued to the other end so we could leave. About 5 minutes later, a really large beat-up pickup truck started flashing its high beams at us and getting very close. Initially, I thought it was the Jeep, but the headlights and overall build of the vehicle was totally different. Sammy started speeding up while Jamie sat in the back watching the truck, while I was putting in directions home. The truck started speeding up with us. I can't emphasize enough how long this road is and how fast and close they were to us. I'm talking inches away from our car. At this point on the road, there are no curves, so they could have just passed us, but they stayed right behind us. Eventually, we hit around 70 miles per hour and the truck was matching our speed. We slowed down to go around a curve, and I remember looking out both sides of the car and seeing nothing but farmland with absolutely no streets or driveways. As we got off the curve, Jamie started yelling that it was gone. I turned around and just like that, the truck had completely disappeared. It wasn't like they turned off their headlights or turned somewhere. They just vanished. A couple of nights later, I called Jamie and Sammy to tell them I had read that apparently there was a serious car accident on prom night a couple of decades ago where a truck was speeding down a curve and both passengers lost their lives. Could be completely made up, but I am never going back there. I have no idea if the people who had been in the Jeep had anything to do with it, but the drive home was completely silent. Something not visible pokes me at night, so I have been experiencing something strange for the past couple of years. It started around 2022. At night, I would feel like someone or something was poking me, but I was often too tired to wake up and see what it was. I just thought I was dreaming at this point and ignored it. That is until it started becoming consistent. Something was poking my arms and legs firmly enough for me to feel it but not hurting me. I have 2 sisters and live with my parents, but they are all in their own rooms sleeping at this time. I am always alone in my room. My sisters are not kids, so they don't play pranks like that, so I could not figure out what was going on. One night, I told myself I would pretend to be sleeping to see what was going on. I opened my eyes once I felt the poking on my arms, and I could visibly see my skin getting indented as if someone was pressing it. But there was no one there. It was the scariest thing that ever happened to me. I thought I was dreaming again, but I clearly was not. I moved my body, and the indents were still happening, like someone was poking me and removing their finger. On my legs, my arms, my stomach. It was very strange. For the next few days, the same thing happened when I tried to figure out what it was. Sometimes my bed would even shake a bit for no apparent reason. When I moved, it was still happening. I don't personally believe in anything paranormal, but I will say that when I was in high school, I was going through a really difficult time and had a lot of negative thoughts. I do believe that places hold energy, but I don't know what this situation means. I am in a much better place now, and I would say it happens maybe 1 to 3 times a year. It kind of stopped being scary at this point because I am so used to it and I can never see anything. I would also like to add that I am someone who has very vivid dreams. But in these instances, I know for a fact I was awake. I'm wondering if anyone has experienced something similar or can tell me what they think is going on. The sound of footsteps on wet pavement. My childhood home was beautiful. There were bay windows on both sides of the front door and plants everywhere. It was my favorite place to spend my days in the summer, but only the days. Ever since I was a small child, I've had an intense fear of windows at night. I'd be terrified by just the thought of walking past a curtainless window and seeing a person staring at me. It got so bad that I started having recurring nightmares of a man outside my bedroom window slowly getting closer and closer over the years. When I was in my early teens, one event solidified my fears and caused the man in my nightmares to finally reach the window and be inches from my face when I looked out to see him. It was a very nice cool summer night and it had just finished raining. My parents opened the living room windows to let the breeze blow in, and the smell of fresh rain filled the room. We all got comfortable as my dad put on a movie. I sat on a love seat directly under one of the windows along the side of the house. The window faced across the side gate that leads to the street. A while into the movie, I began to get tired and was fighting off sleep. I closed my eyes and listened to the leaves rustling in the breeze when I heard what sounded like footsteps hitting wet pavement, rapidly approaching. After about 6 or 7 steps, they stopped completely. I opened my eyes and tried to work up the courage to peek out the window. I wanted to know who would be running down the street at this time of night. I couldn't bring myself to look, but the footsteps had stopped and I felt it was safe to close my eyes again. A few moments later, I heard a man breathing heavily just above my right ear. I couldn't move. I hoped it was all in my imagination. The man then started to speak frantically, begging to be let into the house. I jumped out of my seat and hid behind the wall so he couldn't see me. He continued to ask if he could come inside. My dad ran up to the window to get a better look at the man. He asked if he was injured and needed help. The man kept saying to let him in. My dad went to the closet to grab a baseball bat. The man outside started running again and I couldn't move, but I could hear his steps moving farther away. I turned to look out the front windows and the man had stopped running and was looking through them directly at me. He continued towards the front door, never stopping to look away from me. When he reached the door, he began knocking loudly and trying to turn the handle. He was calling out through the cracked window by the door, asking to be let inside. My dad asked again if he needed help and said he would call someone to come get him. The man tried to open the door once more before running into the street and disappearing into the night. To this day, I cannot look out windows at night, and I will not have any window open after sundown. What's wrong with my friend's house? I have permission to share these stories, and some of them have been posted on other communities before, so they might sound familiar. The people involved are me, my friend who I'll call Clara, another friend of ours who I'll call Iris, Clara's mom who I'll call Karen, Clara's grandma who I'll call Grace, and Clara's dog. Clara's family has a house in a country that borders our home country, and she sometimes takes us there for a few days for a little vacation, which is really sweet. The house is big and has a huge garden with what I think you'd call a swamp and a shed. There are also a lot of trees, like a mini forest behind the shed. So there are multiple stories and encounters. Possible entity 1, the dog. When I was there for the first time, me, Clara, and Iris went to the mini forest and I immediately felt drained and felt the urge to leave. I then saw a balloon-shaped gray blob coming closer and then it vanished. I felt horrible for the rest of the day. That night I couldn't sleep and felt like something didn't want me there and was acting very protective. The next day, Clara said there was a gray dog buried in the garden that was apparently very protective. More recently, before an even scarier encounter happened, which I'll get to later, we were outside at night in the garden near the door close to the house where there is a pool. While going inside because of a thunderstorm, I saw a gray dog running next to the pool. I could see it because the garden lights were on. I didn't think much of it because I already knew about this dog. And it wasn't Clara's dog because he is terrified of thunderstorms and was already inside. Possible entity 2, human. The living room has a door on the left side next to the TV that was open. You can see a staircase from there, and I saw a dark silhouette walking past the stairs. Everyone who was in the house was in the living room at that moment. The third and scariest entity. This one has 2 stories. I'm not sure if it's the same entity, but they both give off the same unsettling feeling. Story 1. In the house were Clara, Iris, Karen, Grace, and the dog. I was not there for this one. Karen was sleeping on the top floor, and the rest were downstairs with Clara and Iris sharing a room. The dog was in the living room. There are only 2 bedrooms upstairs and nothing else. During the night, Clara heard a noise and woke up to find her bag had fallen over. She grabbed something to protect herself but looked around and nothing was there. The next morning, Iris said that during the night something cold that felt like skin had touched her foot. Their room door was locked the entire time. Karen also heard footsteps on the staircase going down during the night while everyone was asleep. The footsteps could possibly have been the dog, but the incident with the locked room remains unexplained. After what felt like forever, I couldn't handle it anymore and asked Clara to walk me upstairs because I was too scared to cross the living room alone. She agreed, and I sat in bed watching videos on my phone when about 10 minutes later she came hurrying up the stairs looking terrified. She asked me if I had been in the room the entire time, and I said yes. She thought either me or her mom had been playing a prank on her, but Karen was asleep and I was upstairs the whole time. What had happened was that while she was watching the thunderstorm alone on the balcony, she heard a hissing sound right at ear level that sounded human-like. She said it sounded rather feminine. We looked it up online, and there is no known animal that makes a sound like that. The next part might be a stretch, but here it is anyway. Earlier that same day around 2 p.m., we were on the balcony drawing because Karen wanted Clara to practice for school, and I didn't want her to draw alone. You can see the swamp from the balcony, so we drew it. Clara drew a woman with long dark hair and white eyes standing in the swamp and jokingly said that was her sister who lives there. We went along with the joke and even wrote her a letter, made it into a paper boat, and put it in the swamp. Later, Clara told me that the woman wasn't completely from her imagination, but that she had actually felt a presence in the swamp and could sense how she looked, then turned it into a joke. Also, before I leaned against the pillar that night, I saw something moving in the swamp and the grass around it moving too, but I blamed it on the darkness and moved on. That might be a stretch, but I still wanted to mention it. Thanks for reading. My experience with a banshee. Hey everyone, I'm new here and I wanted to share my stories. This is only one of the many that I have. It's a shorter story, but I'll try to make it as detailed as possible. For context, there was a female teenager who passed away in a house right by where this happened. I also live right next to a neighborhood that has seen some tragic events over the years. I won't get into all the details, but there was also a lot of loss in the area around that time. It was probably 2 a.m. I have a field right outside my house that is filled with toads every summer. I was drawing on my phone outside because I have insomnia and I enjoy being outside. I decided to go look for some toads because I really like them. So I stood up and made my way to the back of my house near my shed. It's really dark there, and in the field, almost pitch black other than a few house lights and the road outside my neighborhood. I made my way to the field. It had mostly been dug out in 2019 and it had rained the night before, so there were a lot of puddles and water everywhere. I heard some toads calling, so I did a whistle I can do to call them when they go quiet. I heard one right next to me after walking around for a bit, so I bent down with my phone light to find it when I heard a woman scream. The kind of scream you would hear from someone in serious danger. Right behind me, I whipped around and nothing was there. I then heard the sound of something running at me through the wet ground, and the screaming continued. I didn't care about anything other than getting out of there at that point. At first I was a bit startled and confused until I heard the running. Then I bolted. I ran as fast as I could, thinking there was no way I was staying out there. Eventually, after running, I got back to the light of my porch when the screaming abruptly stopped. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, like a weight had just been lifted off my shoulders. That feeling you get when something is wrong and then it suddenly leaves. I was still running and I ran into my house, slamming and locking the door behind me. My grandma, who I live with, woke up and came out to ask what happened, so I told her. Of course, she didn't believe me, but she doesn't really believe in this kind of thing. To this day, I haven't heard it again. I still go outside occasionally to look for toads, but I always bring something with me just in case. I still don't know for sure what it was. I had never believed in the banshee before, but it's the only explanation I can think of. So now I believe in them. That's my story of how I survived a banshee. I hope you felt the chills reading this as much as I did writing it. See you next time. I think someone was actually trying to break into my house that night. After school, I got home, made food, watched TV for a while, and spent some time on my computer. My mom texted me a few times reminding me to do my homework and lock the doors before sleeping. Later that night, the house started feeling weirdly quiet. Not even unsettling at first, just too quiet. I finished my homework, stayed up for a bit longer, and eventually went to sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up thirsty and went downstairs to get water. While I was in the kitchen, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom saying, "Don't forget to lock the front door." I remember thinking that I had already done that, but I still walked over to check. And that's when I saw him. There was an old man standing outside the glass front door staring directly at me, completely motionless, balding, smiling slightly, just standing there in the dark. For a few seconds, we just looked at each other. Then he slowly tried the door handle. I ran upstairs immediately. I don't think I've ever moved that fast in my life. I locked myself in my room and hid under my bed, even though I knew it was a bit childish. A few moments later, I heard glass shatter downstairs. My heart completely dropped. I could hear footsteps moving around the first floor. Slow footsteps, the floor creaking. Someone was actually inside my house. I tried not to breathe too loudly. I remember staring at the darkness near my bedroom door, thinking that if I saw someone's feet outside the room, I was in serious trouble. Then I heard police sirens outside. Right after that, I heard someone shout, "Police, don't move." Everything downstairs turned chaotic. Yelling, running, loud footsteps. A few minutes later, an officer came upstairs and told me everything was okay. Apparently, the man had already been reported lurking around houses in the neighborhood earlier that night, and one of my neighbors called the police after seeing him outside my house. What still unsettles me most is the way he looked at me through the glass door. He looked completely calm, like he already knew he was getting inside. I don't know if anyone will believe me, but if anyone wants to check, this happened in the small town of Norwood, North Carolina. You said, "CAI Shimbat?" An Iowa State Patrol trooper wrote, female, 247. On the incident report, the trucker who called it in had said neither word. He drove the same Wednesday run for 6 years. Slaughterhouse west of Lincoln to a distribution dock outside Davenport. Drop before sunrise. He knew the road by the bend in the median cable, by the way the shoulder sloped down to the cornfield 2 exits past Brooklyn, by which mile markers the rumble strip cut out and which ones it didn't. In October of 2025, the smell hit him for the first time. Mile marker 219, eastbound on the highway in Iowa. 2:47 in the morning. Wet earth. River silt. No water within 10 miles of this stretch of road. He pulled off at the next exit and scrubbed back the dashcam to the moment the smell hit. Nothing on the road. Nothing on the shoulder. Just his headlights and the corn beyond. Late October. He told himself it was field burn. The next Wednesday, early November, same load, same hour, mile 219, 247, the smell. He pulled off, scrubbed back. This time he let it play forward, watching the right side of the frame. A shape on the gravel, not waving, not facing the road, facing away, back to the camera, like she was looking at something on the other side of the guardrail. Hair down to the small of her back, dark and wet looking. Pale jacket. In real time, he never saw her. He always looks. He always sees pedestrians. He sat in the cab a long time. Then he did the thing he will not do again. He called dispatch. A trooper met him at a diner near Walcott about an hour later. Older guy, gray mustache. They drove back west to mile 219 with the lights off. The trooper swept the gravel with his flashlight for 10 seconds, then turned the beam away. He wrote the call up as no contact. When the trucker got back in his cab, he looked at the pink carbon the trooper had handed him. The handwriting was small and careful. Possible pedestrian, female, eastbound shoulder. Mile marker 219, 247. He had never said the word female. He had never said the time. He had not given the trooper the dashcam timestamp. He had not even said the word to. He doesn't call again. The third Wednesday is November the 11th into November the 12th. He drives past mile 219 with the windows up and the radio loud, and he doesn't pull off. The smell hits him anyway. He pulls off. She is there. Same spot. Same posture, same 1.5 seconds in the frame. But this time, when he steps the frame forward one click at a time, he notices something past her. Down where the shoulder slopes off into the field. A long, low shape, dark, with a reflective edge catching the moonlight. It is in every frame she is in. He drives 40 miles to a diner and sits in a booth in the back. He plugs the memory card into his laptop. On the bigger screen, he can see her better. She is not standing on the shoulder. She is standing on something on the shoulder. There is something between her feet and the ground. Something low, that runs parallel to the road, with one corner crumpled inward. The glint he had been seeing in the grass is the cracked rear window of a small dark sedan, upside down in the gravel. He searches for a highway accident at mile marker 219 on his phone. The search bar auto-completes the rest. The suggestion that loads is the same search with the year 2014 added. He hadn't typed any year. The first result is an Iowa State Patrol incident summary archived on a public records site. November 12, 2014. A woman, 26 years old, single vehicle accident, eastbound on the highway, found around 4 a.m. by a long-haul driver who had pulled off to use the restroom. 20 feet from the car, on the gravel between the car and the road, like she had crawled there. The posture he had read as standing was the posture of someone trying to get up and not making it. The hair he saw down her back was the hair of someone with her face in the gravel. She wasn't facing the road. She was facing the wreck. She wasn't asking for a ride. She was asking to be witnessed. He drove home, took the memory card out of the dashcam and put it in his glove box. He put a new one in. 3 days later, he checked the rear camera footage from that morning. The shoulder behind his truck was empty in real time. It was empty on the dashcam. He drove past the spot. He did not pull off. But there was one frame at 4:03 a.m. by the timestamp, just after the truck had passed mile 219. The shoulder behind him is in the rear camera's headlight wash for less than a second, and in that frame on the gravel there is a figure. She is standing. She is facing the road. She is watching the truck drive away. He asked his company for the southern route the next week. The memory card sat in his glove box for 7 months. 2 months ago, outside of a small town in Missouri, he opened the glove box for the registration card during a routine inspection. The card was still there under the manual. He picked it up to move it. It smells like river silt. It is in the desk drawer in his bedroom now. He has not told his wife why the room smells like a river. There's a mimic haunting me. The story I'm about to tell you is 100% true, and it happened to me about a year ago. At the time, I lived in a basement apartment with my fiancé Louis. At first, the apartment was everything we wanted, but over time, the energy shifted. What once was a positive vibe turned into a heavy, depressing, and very negative energy. I haven't thought about this incident in a long time, and to be honest, I don't like thinking about it or talking about it. I'm a firm believer that the more you talk about something, the more it manifests into your reality. But it's come to the point where it's too hard to ignore. One night, my fiancé and I were working late. We're both content creators, so our evenings usually consist of writing scripts, editing videos, and occasionally watching a show or movie. However, this night was one of those late nights where we were both really focused. Lewis is a gamer. When he plays his games, I can hear him from his office. He has a car simulator, and when he shifts gear, I can hear it easily from my office. This particular night, I was very focused, and Lewis opened my door slightly. I saw his silhouette from the corner of my eye, hat and everything. However, I did not want to be interrupted because I was on a roll. So I said, "Leave me alone, not now." I'll admit it was a bit snappy, but we have a rule where we don't knock or chat until a certain time, and it wasn't that time yet. I felt bad though, so I called his name immediately after he walked away. But here's the thing, 2 seconds later I heard Lewis shifting gear in his car simulator and reacting from his office. That's when my heart dropped because there was no way he had just been at my door. It takes time to set himself up in his car simulator, and there was no way in that short amount of time he went from my room to his office. I kept calling his name, but it took several times before he heard me through his headphones. He came into the room with a confused look on his face. I immediately asked him what he wanted when he came to my room earlier. He looked puzzled and had no idea what I was talking about. I asked if he had knocked on my door, opened it, and come into my room at all within the last 5 minutes. He said no. I frantically explained everything to him. He was unsettled, but not as much as me, because that night he slept just fine. I did not. It didn't stop there though. There was more than one incident that took place that night and even later that week. I can share those stories in another post if you're interested. My fiancé and I eventually moved somewhere else because the basement apartment was just too draining and we needed more space. We now have 2 floors. My office is upstairs where the entrance, living room, kitchen, and bathroom are. Lewis's office is downstairs along with our bedroom. It is a beautiful apartment with high ceilings. In my office, there are 3 huge windows. During the day, it's beautiful, but at night, it's quite unsettling. At first, I loved coming into my office at night because I am naturally a night owl, but now I avoid it. My 2 8-month-old kittens don't even like coming into my office anymore. Not even during the day. Both Lewis and I have seen what we call a phantom cat. At first, I thought it was the spirit of his dog that recently passed away, but now I'm not convinced. I consider myself very in tune with energy, and I've always been a very spiritual person since I was a child. My cats will stand at the door of my office and stare inside. They won't stay upstairs at night and always choose to sleep in the bedroom. One time we tried letting them roam upstairs at night, and they came running into our bedroom completely frightened. Ever since, they refused to go back upstairs alone at night. The other day, I saw someone standing at our front door while I was filming for my YouTube channel. It looked like Lewis, so I didn't say anything, thinking he was dropping off groceries and going back to the car for more. He was taking so long that I called him, and when he answered, I could clearly hear the background noise of a public setting. He said he was just checking out at the cash register. Another thing is that I feel completely drained all the time, and lately my anxiety has been really high. I'm also having some health issues, and I'm actually heading to the doctor after posting this. At first I thought it was a mimic, then I thought it was gone. But now I think it's something much more concerning. I don't think it's attached to the house. I don't know how to get rid of it, so if you have any advice, please feel free to share it. Wandered into another dimension. I know how crazy that sounds, and honestly, if I was reading this story and it hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't believe it either. But I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, and it's been years. I was with my mom, and we decided to take a walk on a nice day at our favorite park. It's in the middle of the city, so no matter where you are, you can always hear cars. It was early, so we decided to take the longest path. No one knew where we were. As we walked, we reached a point where we realized we hadn't seen anyone in a long time, which was strange for this park. We couldn't even hear other people. Then we realized that the sound of cars had completely vanished, even though at that point of the path we were close to a highway, or at least we should have been. We found that strange but didn't get scared. After walking a bit further, we saw a man jogging. He was tall, had shoulder-length blonde hair, and was jogging between the trees rather than on the path. After jogging behind one of the thinner trees, he simply vanished. Not ran away quickly, not hid, he vanished. We looked all over the area in case he was hurt, but we couldn't find him anywhere. We couldn't find his tracks either. By this point, we had reached the farthest point of the path and we just wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. We quickened our pace and tried to talk about the most ordinary things we could think of to distract from our growing fear. But then the colors started to change. Normal forest colors became something I could never have dreamed of. The green of the tree leaves looked like a stained glass window with light shining through it. Nothing like the leaves that grow around here. The grass looked like velvet. I don't mean that as a figure of speech. It was a deep, soft-looking green, and it looked like it would be plush and welcoming to lay down on. I wanted to touch it, but my mom wouldn't let me, which was smart of her. But then the trees started to watch us. There were faces in the trees. Not like the trees were alive and walking around, but like there were creatures or beings inside the trees, poking their faces through the bark to watch us. They were human-like, knobby-looking, and as we walked, more faces kept appearing and our fear grew quickly. Not only were there no car sounds coming from outside the park, there were no forest sounds at all by this point. No birds, no bugs, no breeze. We wanted to run, but were afraid of what would happen if whatever was watching us knew we were scared. We thought about calling my sister just to have a familiar voice to talk to as we made our way to the car. But we didn't, which I regret to this day. Then we turned a corner and the world rushed back. There were no more faces, the colors faded back to normal, and the sounds returned like someone turning up a speaker. When we got to the car, we just sat there for quite a while. At first we were afraid to talk, but once we started we couldn't stop. Who was that man? Where did the sound go? What was watching us from the trees? We've been there many times since and haven't experienced anything quite like that again. As strange as it sounds, the closest answer we've come up with is that we somehow wandered into another dimension and the man who disappeared was some kind of supernatural being. We still double-check that people are still visible when they jog past us in the park, and we make sure we can still hear car sounds. This is the first time I've told this story to anyone other than my mom. I know it sounds unbelievable, but I can't stop thinking about the colors. Like if a tree could glow. Like if grass could look like the most welcoming place you could ever rest. As scared as I was that day, part of me wants to go back and find those colors again and lay on that velvet grass. I'm hoping that writing this will help me stop thinking about that day. I do my best not to think about the faces. My house mysteriously flooded during the pandemic. Back in 2018, my family had bought a house outside a rural village in the Irish Midlands. After 4 years of living there, my dad was planning to sell the house and move to the West Coast with his partner, whereas I planned to move back to my hometown in Yorkshire, England. In the summer of 2021, roughly towards the end of the pandemic, my dad and his partner had gone away for a few days to Galway on the other side of the country, so it was just me, my sister, and our dog at home. Waking up early one morning, my sister and I heard the sound of rushing water coming from somewhere in the house. After some investigating, we eventually found that the source of the water was coming from the boiler, which was behind a wardrobe in my sister's room. For whatever reason, water was flowing out of the boiler at a very rapid pace, and although I tried my best to stop it, there was still no sign that it would. Having no idea if the boiler was broken or even how to fix it, my sister and I quickly began to panic because the water was now moving into the living room and starting to flood the house. Unable to solve the problem ourselves, we eventually called our dad and told him what happened. Thankfully, his partner knew of a plumber who lived fairly nearby, and she arranged for him to come and fix the boiler by the end of the day. By late evening, and after the house had been flooding for several hours, the plumber finally arrived. However, when we brought him into my sister's room, after looking confused for a few seconds, the plumber simply turned the handle on the side of the boiler and just like that the water stopped running. According to the plumber, someone had turned the handle completely loose on the side of the boiler and that was why water was flowing out the way it was. Although my sister and I were incredibly relieved the flooding had stopped, we were now left just as confused. How could someone have turned the boiler handle if it was just me and my sister in the house? Obviously neither of us had done it. So how on earth did that handle become so loose? At the time, My sister and I joked there could be a ghost in our house and that they had tried flooding the place so my dad couldn't sell it. Neither of us really believed in the paranormal at the time. But when I think back on it now, how could all of that have happened? Especially when my sister and I know for a fact that no one tampered with that handle. Has anyone else ever had an experience like this? Real story about my childhood experience. Since childhood, I've had many strange memories stuck in my mind. A lot of them are very unusual. For example, when I was very young, I often saw a creature that looked like a crocodile or a lizard but had a human face. I was also constantly told that if I didn't eat my food, a creature would crawl down from the attic and kidnap me. I remember hearing noises coming from the attic and being afraid to go up there. These things are very vague in my memory now. I was very little back then, and as time passes these memories become even more blurred. Maybe all of it was just part of my imagination, but sometimes it becomes hard to distinguish reality from dreams. That's probably normal. But putting all that aside, what I'm about to tell you now I'm certain really happened. I don't want to immediately label it as something paranormal, because I myself haven't found an explanation for it. To be honest, I don't really believe in paranormal phenomena. I love mystery and the unknown, but I don't think such things happen often. Anyway, I'll get straight to the story. This happened around 2014 in the summer or maybe spring. There was a holiday that we call Barakeba. In my country, Georgia, the country not the US state, it's quite a common celebration that is still observed today. It's somewhat similar to Halloween. You dress up as barikas, which are monsters or spirits, and go from house to house asking for treats like churchkila, a traditional sweet made of nuts and eggs. This holiday has very old roots and was celebrated long before Christianity existed. Because of that, my parents, who were deeply religious, often didn't allow me to participate. But that summer in the village, it was just me, my older cousins, and my grandmother. My grandmother allowed me to go out with my friends, and I remember she even bought me a fox mask from a shop so I could wear it for the celebration. So when it got dark, my friends and I went outside. Nothing special happened at first. We were just trying to scare each other and asking people for sweets. Then one of my friends suggested we light a bonfire and jump over it. Normally this is part of a different tradition called Chiaco, which is held in a different month. But we went ahead with it and managed to light a fire using branches. We were jumping over the fire and shouting into the air. After everyone jumped a few times, it was my turn again. When I jumped, I stepped badly, lost my balance, and fell into a drainage ditch that runs along the roads in my village. I was completely covered in mud, so I went home. After taking a bath, I wasn't allowed to go back out to my friends. Upset, I went to my room to sleep. Back then, when I stayed in the village, I slept on the first floor where the windows faced the street. In my room, there was one window that was so low that my friends would often knock on it in the mornings to wake me up. My bed was right next to the window, so the moonlight and the streetlights from the nearby road would shine directly onto it. I tried to sleep, but I was upset and had been crying, so I couldn't fall asleep for a long time. At some point, my thoughts drifted and I dozed off. Couldn't have been more than 5 minutes before I was woken by a knock on the window. I wasn't scared at first. I thought it was my friends, and I even felt hopeful that maybe I could sneak out through the window. I got up, but when I pulled the curtain aside, no one was there. I thought they were hiding, but when I opened the window and looked outside, the dark street was completely empty. I even called out a few times, but no one answered. I don't know why I didn't get scared at that moment, but I was definitely annoyed. I went back to bed, and as soon as I started thinking about it, if it wasn't my friends then who knocked, I became very afraid. I hid under the blanket and tried to sleep again. Cold sweat covered my face and my heart was pounding. As if the knocking wasn't enough, after a short while I heard a scratching sound coming from under the bed. It soon turned into a steady, repetitive noise. It sounded like someone was lying under the bed and scratching something. I can't describe how terrified I was. I was just a child and fear felt 10 times stronger. There was also something strange about the environment around my house. There was only one other inhabited house in the neighborhood. The rest were either abandoned or left empty after their owners had passed away. After some time, I heard the knocking again, but this time I gathered the courage to look at the curtain. The is slightly transparent. People outside can't see into the room unless the light is on, but from inside you can always see the street. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear that someone was outside. Strangely, after the knocking, the scratching under the bed stopped. I was extremely scared and decided to run to the living room where my grandmother was still watching TV. I quietly got out of bed and started walking toward the door when I suddenly heard a loud bang on the window. That frightened me so much that I started screaming and ran to my grandmother. I did not tell him her name. About 2 years ago, as I was taking my dog for a walk at night after school, something very unsettling happened to me. As I was walking the route I go on every day, I noticed it was a bit foggy but still clear enough to see about 5 meters in front of me. Listening to music as always, I saw a taller guy with a blue cap walking frantically toward me. I didn't think too much about it because the people in my neighborhood were generally good people. I did not recognize him though. Maybe he was from the next neighborhood over. As he was approaching me, I noticed he was holding a flip phone, something I hadn't seen anyone use in years. As the distance between us narrowed to about 2 meters, he closed his phone and approached me. My dog was not even tense and actually greeted him. He asked me in formal language if I had some spare money so he could buy aspirin for his headache. I told him I only pay with card, and he asked if I could go with him to the pharmacy and buy it for him because he was feeling very unwell. He really did look ill, and the pharmacy was not even 600 meters away. So I chose to go and help him. As I was walking with him, we started a conversation about my dog. He asked me if she was a border collie, which she was. I didn't think much of it at the time as it isn't a hard breed to identify. As we were about 2 minutes away from the pharmacy, he asked if he could pet her. I said yes, and as he squatted down to pet her, he said something along the lines of "Hello, Chara." My dog's name is Chara. I did not tell him her name. My heart dropped completely. My first instinct was to wait for him to stand up and defend myself. At the time, I had been a semi-professional boxer and was preparing for a tournament in 2 months. But the fear that came over me pushed aside all the training I had been through. He stood up and I kicked him as hard as I could. He instantly fell down. I grabbed my dog and started running toward a nearby school which was closed but had its door open. As I got there, I looked back and saw him limping toward me. I hid in a spot I used to use as a kid when playing hide and seek, behind tall grass in a small opening that led to a room in the basement. I saw him circling around with that same flip phone pressed to his ear, slowly whispering things I could not hear. He circled around 2 or 3 more times. I waited 15 minutes and then got out of the hiding spot. I picked up my dog and ran home as fast as I possibly could. I haven't seen him again for about 4 months after that. When I did see him again, he was talking to a young woman and they went into an apartment building. I was too far away to reach them in time and she didn't hear me calling out. Maybe it was someone else and I was mistaken. I hope I was mistaken. For everyone asking how I picked up a border collie and ran with her. I had been doing physical work since I was young and I had both the strength and the adrenaline to do it. So to the stranger with the flip phone who knew my dog's name, I hope to never cross paths with you again. Can someone explain this to me? Hello everyone. I'm mostly here to ask you to help me solve a mystery I've had for the longest time. Whenever it crosses my mind, I've always questioned if it even happened, and my mom always avoided talking about it. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I heard my sister screaming at the top of her lungs. Me and my brother were upstairs playing with our toys. I watched my mom rush downstairs. In front of our stairs was the garage door and the screaming was coming from there. I looked at my brother and went to check it out as well. My sister passed by me with tears in her eyes and my mom stood there stone cold, figuring out how she was going to handle the situation. Here's the layout. In the garage entering from the house, we had the garage door connected to the house, and when you enter there are 2 large garage doors in front of you for cars, then a door to the right connected to the backyard. Our backyard is fenced, but there is a gate connected to the front, and the fence in the back had these black bars with openings between each bar just wide enough for a cat to get through. You can only access the backyard fence from the backyard, and there is no latch on the front side. so nobody can just get into our yard. As I walked into the garage holding onto my mom, I looked to my right and the garage door connected to the yard was wide open. When I walked around the car, there it was. An adult rabbit laying there, no longer alive, with its neck completely severed. The cut was clean and there was dried dark liquid on the concrete with its organs spread out beside it. My sister assumed it was the neighbor's cat or the coyotes since we were in California. But the only thing was there were no bite marks. Just a clean cut around the neck. And it was fresh. I could feel the warmth near my legs as I crouched down beside it. I was pretty young and asked my mom if we could bring it back. But she just told me to go outside to get me and my brother away and give my sister a breather. When we went outside, the gate was shut. There was no trail of anything. No signs anywhere else in the garage. Looking back on it, this wasn't done by an animal, and the fence from the gate would be hard for anyone to hop over. Even the barred fence in the back was pretty tall, and the only thing that could get between the bars was either the rabbit itself or a cat. This was the strangest thing ever. We don't have anyone who disliked us or anyone we had conflicts with. So it was all just extremely strange and unexplainable. Earlier that same year, or at least around that time, I experienced something else unusual in the house. One moment stood out to me the most. Late one afternoon when the sun had gone down, me and my brother were playing in the living room. Our dining room was at the front of the house and I noticed movement in there. The lights weren't on, so I sent my brother to go turn them on. But he was still in play mode, so I threw the ball into the dark, letting him run over there. As I was about to say something, these strange figures appeared. One was sitting on the table and another was standing next to them. They had what looked like traditional indigenous clothing. The one sitting on the dining table looked cheerful and had a bright yellow glow around them. The one standing looked serious and had a blue glow. But they disappeared as soon as I ran up to them. My brother looked at me confused and ran back to the living room. I sat in the same spot for a moment just thinking about what I had seen, then eventually continued playing with my brother. I never saw them again after that. If anyone has any answers, please share them, because I have no idea what happened that day, or whether there is an explanation for how the rabbit got there or who those figures were. I am good at recollecting my childhood memories, and I feel strongly that what I saw was real, especially memories that left such a lasting impact on me. This happened to me at a ghost hunt in Scotland. Now, this happened a good few years ago, well over 10 years ago, I think, so some details are a bit foggy, but I will do my best to describe what happened. One night, I came across a ghost hunting experience being held in a jail in Scotland. It was only a few hours' drive from me, so I decided to book my place at the event. The event was in a place called Jedburgh, which is in the lowlands of Scotland, not too far from the border between Scotland and England. I had not heard of the group arranging the event before, so I decided to do some research about them. They had great reviews, and it seemed like nothing on their ghost hunts was staged or set up, so it was allegedly a genuine experience. So I made my booking. I headed down to Jedburgh through the beautiful Scottish countryside with great views and scenery along the way. I left at around 6 p.m. as the event started at 9 p.m., thinking I would arrive in plenty of time. Being me, I did arrive a bit late. I blame my navigation system. When I arrived, the place where the ghost hunt was being held was pretty imposing. It was an old jail with a very dark and difficult history. I parked in front of the jail where everyone else had parked and was met by one of the team members who was expecting me. He escorted me to a great hall where I needed to sign in, which was a requirement of the building's owners. Once that was completed, I was brought into the hall where everyone was waiting. There were quite a few people there for the ghost hunt, not including the ghost hunting team itself. People had come from all over the country, which surprised me. There were maybe 7 or 8 members of the ghost hunting team and of course a psychic, which I don't really believe in but was willing to go along with. Before we started, the team explained that we would all be split into 3 different groups to explore the vast jail. Before we began, the psychic wanted to do a blessing to protect everyone during the investigation. He said that anyone who didn't want to be part of the blessing could wait outside until it was completed. I decided to head outside and wanted no part of it. There was a table in the center of the hall that was full of equipment we could use during the hunt. The ghost hunt started as my group entered the male wing of the jail, which is said to be extremely active. We went up a set of stairs slowly as they really did not look very safe. Once at the top, we reached the male wing. It was very dark and looked neglected, which added to the atmosphere. There were many cells with big heavy iron doors. To start off, we were asked if anyone wanted to do a session with a spirit board in one of the cells. I volunteered to assist along with a girl from the group. We started the session calling out to see if anyone was there. Honestly, nothing really happened. Nothing moved and no one felt anything during the session, so we stopped. One of the ghost hunting team members mentioned that he had been doing this for a few years and honestly not much happens on most hunts. He said he had only witnessed a few things in all his time doing this but wouldn't go into details about what kept him coming back. I entered one of the cells and used an EMF detector they provided. Picked up nothing at all. We spent a good hour in the male wing and found nothing. No sounds, no movement, nothing. So we left to give another group a chance to investigate the area. We headed back to the Great Hall where the psychic had dowsing rods and asked for a volunteer. A woman came forward and after a little while the rods did move, which looked interesting, though I wasn't completely convinced. During this session, the psychic asked if anyone could smell something sweet in the air, like perfume filling the hall. Many people said they could smell it, but I personally couldn't verify it. After a break, we headed to the women's wing of the jail. I asked to be locked into a cell for about 10 minutes. Total darkness, couldn't see anything at all. I used a torch to light the cell and turned on the piece of equipment they had given me, which scanned radio signals in the area. I found nothing at first, so I sat in the cell in silence. A few minutes later, I turned the device back on, and this time I heard a voice come through it. I couldn't make out exactly what it said, but it was clearly there, which I found strange since there was nothing when I first turned it on. When my time was up, I left the cell and found that the group was doing an experiment in another cell nearby. All I could hear was excitement and what sounded like surprise coming from inside. Apparently, there was a table in the cell that had been moving on its own. I couldn't get inside as there were too many people already in there. It's a shame I didn't get to see it with my own eyes. After that, we had another break to recover from what had happened in the women's wing. Everyone was pretty shaken and excited at the same time. Some people were so affected that they actually left the building entirely. For the final hour, we were told we could go anywhere we wanted to explore on our own. I decided to head back to the male wing for the last stretch of the hunt. We were standing in the corridor where the cells were when something happened that genuinely scared me. I heard a growl directly in my left ear. It was as if someone invisible came right up to me and growled into my ear. It made me jump. I first thought I had imagined it until it happened again. I looked around and no one was near me. I tried to find an explanation for where that sound could have come from, but I couldn't figure it out. It still unsettles me even today. Once the hunt was finished, I left the jail, and on the way home I was almost involved in a serious car accident. Whether something followed me out of that building or not, I honestly don't know. But that night shook me up quite a bit. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. It truly means the world to me. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story, and I'll see you in the next one.